Hi guys, and the presentation is supposed to be made in English. I hope you don't mind. And so, from my side, as we see around us, Kubernetes is nothing new. People already named Kubernetes as the next Linux or application server 1 year ago. Even PKO and PZU has it, so there must be something. So instead of giving you an introduction of Kubernetes, I decided to make a presentation about my experience introducing companies into the Kubernetes and into CloudNative. So my name is Wojciech Barczyński. I'm a head of engineering in Hypatos and Smack.io. These two sibling startups are bringing machine learning and deep learning technologies to finance and accounting departments. So in short, we are helping accountants to make their work faster. So this is about me, my background. I'm a software engineer. I'm a software developer. Whenever I was coming to the companies, there was a little bit mess on the back end, and continuous delivery deployment process was not really working. And to this kind of extent that people were running automatic script on the machines because they were afraid that there might be side effects. So, full trust into infrastructure. And I have this experience in last 3 startups I was working. So like HQ is from Rocket Internet, is the e-commerce in Indonesia, used to be one of the 10 the biggest e-commerce in Indonesia. Smack.io, now where I am, and Hypatos are working in 2 companies. Long story. If we have a beer together, I can tell you why we have 2 companies and 1. And before, I lost 3.5 years with OpenStack. Lost years of my life. I learned a lot, but it was painful experience. So I see not only me lost some years of his or her life. And before, SAP, research and development. So I know a little bit how the enterprises look like, and I was so impressed by that, then I was working just in the startups. So what I'm doing, I come into company, set up continuous deployment, I'm moving X to Kubernetes, and introduce microservices or some kind of flavor of microservices. Of course, it's the double-edged sword, but that would be a topic of another talk. And regarding technology, we are mostly Golang, because I would like you to know where I'm come from, from which perspective I look at. We are mostly Golang and Python. We use PyTorch, TensorFlow, and we use Kubernetes for everything. So we are on the hosted Kubernetes on Amazon, and we are on hosted Kubernetes on Azure. Azure Kubernetes Service, and Amazon is AKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. And we use plenty of cloud-native projects, or we experiment with some. I will share with you later. So first thing, I want to say you that whenever we're thinking about introducing the Kubernetes, it's all about the change and buying people in the new technology. So I was thinking about how I should start this presentation. And of course, we know methodology. Yes? We have DevOps culture for already 10 years. And we know that we should focus on flow, feedback, continuous experimentation, and learning. And this is the way how we can move organization faster. And Kubernetes help us. I will show you why, how. So process of small fixes, every sprint better, every time, every sprint, a little bit more improvement, a little bit more Kubernetes, or any technology you believe in. If you believe in Turbo Pascal, then it can be Turbo Pascal, or can be Kubernetes. And of course, we do it in sprints. And first, and of course, DevOps, making new technology is about change, is about productivity, and of course, morale of every team member. So this is the engine, how we introduce any kind of change, and including Kubernetes, because Kubernetes is yet another technology, another Linux, another cloud application service. So first thing, I would just want to let you know what is my general thinking about infrastructure as a software developer. And this is what we always saying, yes, automate everything. But to be honest, I don't like it, I don't believe it. Because if you need to move fast, if you need to deliver, you cannot just stop the world and automate. And whenever I go into some companies talking with people, there's now this kind of imperative in people's heads, automate, automate, automate. Which sometimes is too early to make decisions, too early to write some scripts. So I believe more in this finding golden mean. So I mean this kind of famous ancient Greek concept that there should be a middle somewhere between two extremes that should bring us to happiness and better world, or Kubernetes in this case. So risk of automation, probably guys you know. Never-ending optimization, we know it, we were there. Easy to get frustrated, I don't need to tell you. Go in the wrong direction, and of course, as we go harder, if we try to optimize more and more and more and more, it's getting slower and slower and slower. How we address it? Time boxing, version 1, version 2. Version 1, version 2, this is the approach when you try to rush first version as soon as possible to bring it to your clients or to your development team or to your business guys, make a bunch of mistakes, and later deliver version 2. So, because delivering version 1 usually buys us more time, because people already saw it, they're happy, and they let us, or give us, especially business, can give us more time to make our Kubernetes setup perfect. So we can go to these presentations and say like, oh, guys, I did it. But of course, business is always very skeptical. But okay, another talk. And I know most of you is software developers and iOS, and I just want to draw an analogy. It's a little bit similar to the quality of the software, yes? Running into refactorization before the feature is finished, before the customer see the feature, I mean, it's a waste of time, usually. And so, also, of course, the same mechanism, never-ending optimization, refactoring, code is getting rigid, so the next changes are going to be harder and harder. It's very similar. We also, in software engineering, we are trying to find this balance. When to refactor, and when to use magic copy and paste. And this similar approach in our company at least, also this kind of version 1, version 2. So first to ship it, make a bunch of mistakes, get some exceptions or get some clients complaining about the feature and the business value, and then patch it, patch it, patch it. So always have this way of thinking, I deliver the feature, I get it to the business, I get it like end to end, and later patch it, patch it, patch it. So this is the recurring pattern in my presentation. I hope you will enjoy it. And of course, I'm aware what might happen, yes? So this is on one hand, low quality, low automation, disaster. And this one, we also know. If we are saying in the stand-up for n time that we are working on Kubernetes and monitoring, business is getting a little bit nervous. After 10 times, they get suspicious. After 15 times, they don't believe us at all. I mean, what are you working on? Like, what is the feature you're working on? Like, Kubernetes, but what? And then you try explain it, and when you explain it, then it's just getting worse, yes? Because the question is, do you need it? Do you need it to develop this feature? And so on and so on. So it's always a good idea to first deliver it. And whenever we are talking about change, and why we want to deliver it faster and sometimes lower quality, or as I'm going to tell you, to do some things manually and not be afraid of it, and sometimes even be proud of it, is that because we are interested in new technology in our company. So we need to have early wins. People need to trust us. So that's why the worst case of introducing Kubernetes, and of course I did it once, was to sit at my desk for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and come back and say how amazing I am. I'll build a continuous delivery or deployment pipeline. And people say like, it's too complicated. Yes, and then you go back to the drawing board. And the technique that I just want to tell you in general, in the infrastructure that I'm using is semi-manual first and then automate. And this diagram just shows some kind of dynamics between making things manual and automation. And this is our perfect way of building our product. It involves application, Kubernetes, platform, cloud setup, everything. Somewhere there is this optimum one that you see that you are going to have in a couple of months or weeks, and then you come to the conference and you talk about it. But the problem is it's changing all the time. For example, changes of requirements, classic. I think more common is new team member. Something changed, different structure of the team. It's always moving. That's why imagine we would spend here weeks to optimizing something, and then we need to jump. Wasted effort. And we do it a lot because we like the technology. I'm doing it all the time. That's why I always need also my team to sometimes tell me like, oh, Wojtek, you're telling something and you're not doing it. So how to find this gold middle? So here's the secret. Watch out. Ta-da. With the team. So I put these small letters by these words with a lowercase. because I just want to say that this is the kind of like, not the ones that you can hear from these motivational speakers about team inclusion, diversity. It's more about hearing all the voices. So for example, in my team, I'm the one who is pushing, like, oh, let's deliver. But also I have in my team people who say, like, Wojciech, come on. We are moving too fast. Production broke 2 times. Business looking on us like deers in front of the headlights. So maybe let's slow down. And that is why we always try to find together this best way. And because Kubernetes is another technology. Before we had Puppet, Chef, Cloud, and so on and so forth. And we also use the same one. So let's take a look how we do it more. Let's go back more technically. So regarding my assumptions, there are some basic things. So I sometimes like to take shortcuts, but basics are basics. I mean, I cannot imagine we don't have continuous deployment. I mean, I don't see any reason that you would not have continuous delivery at least. Continuous delivery, at least we would build the Docker, zip, dep, RPM, God forbid, MSI. Yeah? So this is something like a must for me. So I'm coming to the company, starting working, that's the must. Because we need to at least know that the product builds, and this is not 80s, it's not 91 or 92. We are in 2019. At least we need to be sure that code on the master is testable, linted, and we can deliver it, ship it to client. So this is some kind of basics. So even if I want to take shortcuts, this is what for me is like first imperative. And I have 3 techniques to optimize my semi-manual approach. First is literate pull request. Second is README. And third one is makefile. What I mean by literate pull request, it means I start working on the task, or I expect my team members to start working on task, open pull request immediately. And write as much stuff as possible. Your assumptions, design. Later you do some stuff, first semi-manually, so I mean manually. Copy and paste all commands you're going to use. Whether you use Salt, Ansible, Terraform, you call some kind of magic curl with 15 arguments, I'm expecting to have in this PR. Because this PR going to help us in a couple of weeks, because mostly in our work, we find out that we needed something half a year ago, and we need it again. So in the worst case, we can find it here. And especially this is important because especially for system engineers who are working alone in the team, this often happens, that we have one system engineer and more software developers, they usually work alone. So if you write things down, you are much more objective to your own assumption. As even American scientists had to prove it, you are more objective. So it's sometimes good to go through it, and sometimes you can see mistakes or wrong assumptions you made. Second one is not surprise. When our pull request was beautiful written book, then we pick up some parts of it and we put it in the README, and the same. Copy and paste in such a way that if I need to do the same thing in half a year, I just open the README and copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Because we are now buying ourselves a time for understanding the requirements. And this one, this copy and paste thing, I also treat it as a code. So I'm taking care that it's properly described. And together with architecture decision records or any kind of documents or emails, messages about design, this is some kind of a base for me to move forward with design and discuss it with my team. And of course, we're buying, as I said, we are buying ourselves time for understanding the requirements, not this slide. This slide is more about different thing. So there's always a question how to get to the semi and to automatic. So I'm sometimes trying to do like that I'm trying to find a good moment for doing that. Because usually when we do something semi-manually or manually, copy and paste, we don't want to come back to this work. So sometimes we can use opportunity that we have new employee coming to the team, and he could do it for us. Or any kind of change dynamics, we can use it as naturally to move it forward, almost for free. And at least people are not getting frustrated. So that was about this kind of semi-manual automatic things, which is going to be a recurring theme of this presentation. And if we take a look on technologies, so this is my experience. I started with Salt, Chef, Ansible, Puppet, CloudFormation. This is also a thing I want to forget. Terraform and Kubernetes in the last 3 years. And usually now I do not use anything except Terraform and Kubernetes. In my setup, I can allow it. Maybe in your company, if you work, especially maybe in some enterprise, maybe you need to work with Puppet or Chef. Probably there are still such companies. Or in the best case, Ansible. Why I use these two tools together, and I think they really nicely fit together, is because Terraform let us to use the same language to describe our setup in any kind of cloud provider and also on-premise. So this is really nice. Who did use Terraform? Yes. So this is the guys who saw the light, or girls and girls. And what is the best? Terraform will let you know what it's going to do before you even execute it. So sometimes you can find out that you are going to delete whole production. And Terraform is going to tell you that before you hit enter and the hell breaking up and the business is calling you and you know how it ends. So this is really nice. So I had to mention that because there are some people who still don't know Terraform. So I just want to spread the word. And Kubernetes, why Kubernetes? Who knows Kubernetes? Who works every day in Kubernetes? More and more people. So for people who don't know Kubernetes, I'm not going to give introduction, but what is the most important thing is hiding data of infrastructure. You can treat your platform or your cloud as a black box. You just send your application in the Docker and you just say, run it for me under this URL. 3 instances, and you don't really care about anything else. And it really doesn't matter whether Kubernetes is set up on 1 machine or 1,500. It gives you this kind of, it's got some kind of complexity you don't need to think about so many complexity. For example, if you're working with EC2, load balancers, volumes, there's a lot of things you have to juggle in your head. And with Kubernetes, it's just well-defined, the same concepts every time you deploy your application. It doesn't matter whether it's the cloud, on-premise, or whether it's Google or Azure. And that comes to the next slide, is also this kind of common language. So in our case, in our company, we have some big enterprise clients who unfortunately don't want to cloud. I don't know why. So we need to deploy on-prem, but we also deploy it on Kubernetes. So because of the fact that we deploy on Kubernetes, all our code is the same. And another thing which is important for me as Kubernetes introduction of it is that with Kubernetes, you can start small. You can start with small configuration files. You don't need to bring all Kubernetes goodies. You don't need to bring all the full features. You can start very small. So for example, you can start with very small configuration, how to run your application. And then as you learn more Kubernetes, you can use more and more features. Kubernetes does not force you to use all the features in the one place. And this is a common theme for all cloud-native applications. And it's also that's why it let us also to iterate much faster. Each of these applications, so here's the ingress controller, this is the Prometheus for monitoring, this is the also invoice controller, and this one is etcd, is Raft-based configuration storage. So all these applications you can deploy with 1 or 2 commands on Kubernetes, play around with it. You can make a bunch of mistakes, and then you can make a decision whether you are going to use it or not. So I think this is also the biggest benefits which you can show very early in your company, is that whenever somebody has an idea to use some kind of one of these projects, you can really test it very, very fast. So this brings us to the next conclusion, because we said about the good things. Of course, it does come with some price. So I'm not going to cover in this presentation. Maybe I will have another presentation in other conferences. It's not the free lunch, because if the infrastructure is getting simpler, maybe not dumber, I don't want to say dumber, but maybe less sophisticated, the application has to take it over. So for example, how to make the database migration, how to coordinate different components of our application running in different Dockers. So our application naturally getting more complicated, so you need to be a little bit cautious when you're moving the application like one-to-one. You just lift it and ship it. So it might end bad, so you just feel aware of that. So from our side, as a system engineers or developers who likes Kubernetes, what we do generally, if we move to Kubernetes, is we work with developers side by side. Actually, in most of the companies I was working, I was the one who was building Docker files, optimizing them, and it was not pretty, it was not pleasant, but it brought a lot of benefits to developers, and they were more willing to follow Kubernetes stuff. And also, what I'm going to show you later, prepare some templates, because if we're using Kubernetes, we can share also almost the same way of deploying any kind of application in our company. So here's the slide. Get much more sophisticated. There's some kind of rules. It's called 12-factor apps, which says how to build the application, which is going to feel good on the Kubernetes. So we covered the application. We covered the change in general. And what I want to now say is about bringing the team with you. So I think this is very important. So in our team, what we do, I teach everybody Kubernetes. But on the other hand, I also try to keep the process simple. I'm going to show you that. So new developers has to learn Kubernetes. But later, what I'm doing is, first, I do not terrorize them with Kubernetes greatness, and I hide all Kubernetes from them. So I'm teaching them, showing them how to work with Kubernetes, but I'm trying that they don't need to look at Kubernetes application definitions unless they really need to. So how we are doing that? We have prepared templates for our developers. Then they can copy and paste these templates. There's one template for Makefile, Travis CI, because we use Travis CI instead of Jenkins, and Kubernetes deployment files where they need just to change 2-3 things. And we hide it. OK, so it's now a copy and paste. And also, if developer open the Travis CI is something like Jenkins Bunny Cloud, for people who don't know Travis CI. When they open the Travis CI file, they also don't see Kubernetes greatness. They see something like that. So we just try to hide this complexity so they can just focus on their work. So, or me, when I wear the hat of developer, I can focus on my task. And we also provide them a simple way of working with components. So every component should have run local, because it's the Docker. We should be able, with Docker Compose or with local Kubernetes installation, be able to run any application. Whenever our developer is merging code to the master, there is automaton, which is deploying it to development. Whenever our developer is putting a tag on the master, we release it to the staging. And we also have a central repository that represents the whole state of Kubernetes. It's called Hypatos Platform Git. And whenever a pull request, which is automatically created there, is getting merged, we deploy to the production environment. So we hide all the Kubernetes things from this kind of everyday workflow. They just work with git tag and pull requests. I think some companies call it GitOps, Wave especially. They also have their own approach for that. But I think it's really nice because on one hand, you teach developers Kubernetes, but in every day of work, you hide it. So then it's even easier for them because they don't, or me, myself, is not complaining that, for example, I need to remember how to create something with Kubernetes. So how we got there? So I did some things wrong before. So in the first company I was doing that, we had the deployment in each of the components, separate deployment scripts. So every component was deployed separately, and there was no central Git repository. So I could not have in Git any kind of state. And also we use this copy, Makefile, and Travis CI. The only problem here, or the good thing, was that I was working in the Berlin office with developers. So whenever they complain that in these Makefiles or in the scripts there's too much kubectl commands, or they need to think about kubectl, I was there and I was saying, and I was treating it more like they are complaining. I'm there, I'm going to explain them. But that was something that later inspired me, because this kind of complaining, these guys were right. I mean, they should not be terrorized by greatness of Kubernetes. They should have just easy workflow. But I thought in this time that Kubernetes is so nice. So this is this Makefile with a lot of commands. So that's how all the repos were looking. So we had Docker file, almost the same for each of the projects. Makefile, almost the same, except 2 values. These guys were also almost the same, except maybe the name of the Docker. And what we did, we copy and pasted. Because we didn't really know where we are heading, and we didn't want to solve or try to build a common deployment script, because it was a waste of time. We don't know where we are heading. why to develop it? So we decided to do copy and paste, but all these things we were keeping them the same. So that was responsibility also of developer to not mess with it too much. And that was also quite interesting use case. We had to migrate from Amazon virtual machine to Kubernetes on Google Cloud. And by doing that, we could make this transition much simpler because guys who were deploying their application with Puppet, they were just getting this copy and paste files, and we were slowly moving from Amazon to the Google Cloud on Kubernetes, Google Kubernetes engine. That was very important, it's just the context. The next experience of mine is in Python and SMAC. The difference here is that we have two teams, and I'm sitting in Warsaw, so I cannot every time help developers who are in Berlin. I'm sitting with developers in Warsaw, and we have a lot of machine learning components. And here, what I experienced, and that the same approach I used before was too complex for people. And what I did, this is what I told you, introduce this kind of global Git repository and start to work on the Git tags and Git pushes just to hide even more, because I was not there. So if people were complaining that it's too complicated, I was not there to explain them that they are wrong and I'm right. So I had to really simplify it even more. So keep it simple. So here what changed in our repositories, you can see that we have two makefiles. This makefile contains only things that developer needs to develop the application. Almost no Kubernetes goodies. You don't see even kubectl there. Or maybe you see once. And all these kind of things that I reuse as a system engineer or as a developer who wants to do something more, create maybe configuration files, and he wants to keep it as some kind of live documentation, went to the tools. So it was really hidden. So all these two things got much more simpler. And we also removed the version file because we moved to the Git tag, which is a natural way of working with Git. This is the example of makefile. So here almost no kube commands, only for creating config, copy and paste. And this is also the Travis example. Any kind of more complexity is hidden here. And here also we are just calling a curl, and we're executing common commands for everything. Of course, in this script here, we're installing kubectl or if we are deploying to the Azure, also Azure CLI. But developer doesn't need to know about it. For him, it's like, OK, something happens. And also for myself, because I also don't want to think about it when I'm developing, because also scientific proven, I have heard so, that usually when we are working on something, we can keep up to 6 concepts in our heads when we are working. So this is very important for daily development experience. When you can cut some kind of complexity and let user to not see it or developer to not see it, you make them more happy, more productive, and yourself also, because you don't need to think about it. But you should think about how you should deploy with Kubernetes if you just need to add another button in your e-commerce shop. And how we do Kubernetes? Small team, 15 people, 2 teams in Berlin and Warsaw. We use just Kubernetes, plain Kubernetes files. We generate them with replacing strings. So we're using the env subst is a command. And now we move to customize. We do not use Helm, and we avoid operators. I'm against Helm because Helm reminds me a little bit of chef cookbooks, where we try to develop something that should serve needs of everybody. So the Helm's cookbooks has this tendency that they grow, they have multiple configuration options, and it's very hard to work with that. We avoid operators because most of the operators have low quality. So if you're thinking about using operators, I would advise you first to test them. There are a few of them which are very solid, but most of them, they have bugs. And you normally find out about these bugs in production. So for example, we use the etcd, one of operators, we had bad experience, or another operator for backupping. Also, there were some bugs, and next time we will test it even more hard. And about our setup, so maybe you will have some questions. Maybe you are considering to use Kubernetes, and then you can ask me after this talk or when we are going to have a coffee. We are on Kubernetes EKS. We are using on-prem, and we are on Azure. So if you are interested in the comparison between them, just let me know. On observability, we also use the most stable ones, because if you take a look on the cloud-native projects, you can see there are a few very stable ones you can easily just use in production. So for example, Grafana, Prometheus, FluentD, Elasticsearch and Kibana, of course, they are not cloud-native. They are not under the umbrella of cloud-native. And of course, the Kubernetes. This is like a core cloud-native projects. They're production-ready. They will run. There will not be some kind of strange bugs. But there's also a bunch of other projects which are quite new. So I just want to warn you, before you apply them in production, just test them more and just spend more time to checking whether they're working as you expected. Because most of these projects are quite new. We use the traffic as the ingress controller. Regarding traffic, it led us to configure the ingress controller using a very simple configuration files. And for me, it's very important to have something that is readable. And also, traffic has an integration to almost everything. It integrates very fast with Kubernetes. It has integration to Let's Encrypt. And most of the tools commonly used in the production or commonly used in the cloud-native world. And the project we are looking on, last time I had a presentation about Keyflow in Cloud-Native Warsaw conference. We are looking to Keyflow to more structure our machine learning tasks. And we are also using Argo for workflows. So for example, if we need to build one of models for one of our products, we use it to structure the whole workflow. It means download data, clean data, prepare data, train the model, ship the model to production. Also quite nice project, and it has also Python CLI. So what I want to leave you with, if you are working with Kubernetes, or if you want to introduce Kubernetes, focus, of course, on the early wins. Train your team members. I think Kubernetes is this kind of technology that's very simple, but it has some kind of rough edges. So I think like 1 day of training, Kubernetes training, with you as the person who introduced it would be perfect. Because Kubernetes, to be honest, is very simple. So whenever I'm doing a presentation of Kubernetes, I feel like, oh my God, this is so simple. It's not so complicated, but there's a lot of this kind of small data you should be aware of before starting with Kubernetes. And as I said, teach people, let them to forget. Keep it simple, and I also want to leave you with this kind of technique to deliver and then patch, and thinking about not even delivering a product, but also introducing or building your infrastructure, also in this kind of way. Deliver, patch, 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 patch. Because, as you know, business is always pushing for features. They don't like infrastructure tasks. They always complain about it. And probably they are right about it. But if you deliver something early, deliver some kind of early wins, it's easier to get a buy-in from the business for the Kubernetes. Thank you very much, guys. And I hope you have some questions.